Forsook Solomon builded his own house in 13 years, and brought it till to perfection, or perfect end. He built an house of the forest, or out of the wood of Lebanon, of 100 cedars of 100 cubits of length, and of 50 cubits of breadth, and of 30 cubits of height. And he builded the alleys betwixt the pillars of cedars, for he had hewn down trees of cedars into pillars. And he clothed all the chambers with walls of cedar, the which chamber was sustained, or borne up, with 45 pillars, and one order had 15 pillars set against themselves, and beholding themselves each even against other, by even space betwixt the pillars. And on the pillars were 4 square posts, even in all things. And he made a porch of pillars of 50 cubits of length, and of 30 cubits of breadth. And he made another porch in the face of the greater porch. And he made pillars and pommels on the pillars. Also, he made a porch of the king's seat, in which the seat of doom was. And he covered it with wood of cedar, from the pavement unto the highness. And a little house, in which he sat to deem, was in the middle porch by like work. Also, Solomon made an house to the daughter of Pharaoh, whom he had wedded, by such work, by what manner work he made, and this porch. He made all things of precious stones, that were sawed at a rule and measure, both within and without forth, from the foundament unto the highness of walls, and within until to the great street, either courtyard. And the foundaments were of precious stones, great stones of 10, either of 8 cubits. Precious stones hewn of even measure were above, in like manner, and of cedar. And the greater court, either void space, was round, of 3 orders of hewn stones, and of 1 order of hewn cedar beams. Also, and in the inner large street of the house of the Lord, and in the porch of the house of the Lord. Also King Solomon sent and brought from Tyre Hiram, the son of a woman widow, of the lineage of Naphtali, of the father of a man of Tyre, a craftsman of brass, and full of wisdom and understanding and doctrine or teaching, to make all work of brass. And when he had come to King Solomon, he made all his work. And he made 2 pillars of brass, 1 pillar of 18 cubits of height, and a line of 12 cubits compassed ever either pillar. And he made 2 pommels or capitals, molten of brass, which were set on the heads of the pillars, 1 pommel of 5 cubits of height, and the t'other pommel of 5 cubits of height, and by the manner of a net, and of chains knit together to themselves by wonderful work. Ever either pommel of the pillars was molten. 7 works like nets of orders were in 1 pommel, and 7 works like nets in the t'other pommel. And he made perfectly the pillars, and 2 orders about all the works like nets, that those should cover the pommels which were upon the highness of pomegranates. In the same manner he did also to the 2nd pommel. And the pommels that were upon the heads of the pillars in the porch were made as by work of lily, of 4 cubits. And again, other pommels in the highness of pillars above, by the measure of the pillar, set against the works like nets. And 200 orders of pomegranates were in the compass of the 2nd pommel. And he set the 2 pillars in the porch of the temple. And when he had set the right half pillar, he called it by name, Joachim, that is, steadfast. In like manner he raised up the 2nd pillar, and he called the name thereof Boaz, that is, strength. That he set upon the heads of the pillars a work by the manner of lily. That the work of the pillars was made perfect. Also he made a molten sea, that is, a washing vessel for priest, round in compass, of 10 cubits from brink to brink. The highness thereof was of 5 cubits, and a cord of 30 cubits went about it by compass. And the engraving under the brink compassed it, and it compassed or came about the sea by 10 cubits. 2 orders of engravings, containing some stories, were molten, and stood upon 12 oxen, of which oxen 3 beheld to the north, and 3 to the west, and 3 to the south, and 3 to the east. And the sea was above upon those oxen, of which all the hinder things were hid within. All the thickness of the sea was of 4 fingers, or a palm, and the brink thereof was as the brink of a cup, and as the leaf of a lily crooked again. The sea contained 2,000 baths, that is 3,000 metrics. And he made 10 brazen foundaments or bases, each foundament of 4 cubits of length, and 4 cubits of breadth, and of 3 cubits of highness. And that work of the foundaments was raised betwixt, and engravings were between the jointures. And between the little crowns and the circles were lions, oxen, and cherubims. And in the jointures in like manner above. And under the lions and the oxen were as reins of bridles of brass hanging down. And by each foundament were 4 wheels, and brazen axle trees. And by 4 parts were as little shoulderings under the washing vessel. The shoulderings, that is, short pillars to sustain the washing vessel, molten, and beholding against themselves together. And the mouth of the washing vessel within was in the highness of the head, and that appeared without forth was of 1 cubit, and it was all round, and had altogether 1 cubit and an half. And diverse engravings were in the corners of pillars, and the middle pillar between was square, not round. And the 4 wheels, which were by the 4 corners of the foundament, cleaved together to themselves under the foundament. 1 wheel had 1 cubit and a half of height. And the wheels were such, which manner wheels be wont to be made in chariot, and the axle trees, and the nave stocks, and the spokes, and the felloes, or the dowels of those wheels, all things were molten. For also the 4 little shoulderings, by all the corners of 1 foundament, were joined together, and molten of the foundament, that is, were molten together with that foundament, and made 1 body. And in the highness of the foundament was a roundness of 1 cubit and a half, so made craftily, that the washing vessel might be set above, having his portrains and diverse engravings of itself. And he engraved in those walls that were of brass, and in the corners cherubims and lions and palms, as by the likeness of a man standing, that those seemed not engraved, but put to by compass. By this manner he made 10 foundaments, by 1 melting out, and 1 measure, and like engraving. Also he made 10 washing vessels of brass. 1 washing vessel took or held 40 baths, and it was of 4 cubits. And he put each washing vessel by itself, by each foundament by itself, that is 10. And he made 10 foundaments, 5 at the right half of the temple, and 5 at the left half. And he set the sea at the right half of the temple, against the east, at the south. Also Hiram made cauldrons, and panes, and wine vessels. And he made perfectly all the work of King Solomon in the temple of the Lord. He made 2 pillars and 2 cords of the pommels, that is, circles compassing the pommels, at the manner of cords, upon the pommels of pillars, and 2 work-like nets, that those should cover the 2 cords that were upon the heads of the pillars. And he made pomegranates, 402 works like nets, and the 2 orders of pomegranates in each work like a net, to cover the cords of the pommels that were on the heads of the pillars. And he made 10 foundaments, and 10 washing vessels on the foundaments, and 1 sea, and 12 oxen under the sea, and cauldrons, and panes, and wine vessels. All the vessels which Hiram made to King Solomon in the house of the Lord were of latten. And the king melted out of those vessels in the field country of Jordan, in clay land, betwixt Succoth and Zarthon. And Solomon setted all the vessels in their places. But for the great multitude, no weight was of the brass. And Solomon made all the vessels in the house of the Lord. And Solomon made soothly he made all the golden altar, that is, the altar of incense, that was within the temple, and the golden board, upon which the loaves of setting forth were set. And he made of most pure gold, golden candlesticks, 5 at the right half, and 5 at the left half, against God's answering place. And he made as the flowers of a lily, and golden lanterns above, and golden tongs, and pots, and hooks, and vials, and mortars, and censers of purest gold. And the hinges of the doors of the inner house of the Holy of Holy Things, and of the doors of the house of the temple were of gold. And Solomon performed all the work that he made in the house of the Lord, and he brought in the things which David his father had hallowed, silver and gold vessels, and he kept those in the treasures of the house of the Lord.